So anyway, needless to say, I didn't work very much on that fire.
What happened though? So you got hurt and you're in your gear. What do you remember happening next?
Well, if I recall correctly, it was Mac, the one that was the trainer back then. He was in charge. And so when I told him what happened, he said, well, he says, you stay up in the ridge and just take care of the base camp. You know, he says, and don't worry about going down. So I did that, and I spent all my time there, and then we were picked up. I don't remember now how we were picked up. We didn't, I don't know if it was by helicopter or what, because I mean, I didn't evacuate or anything.
You stayed with the crew.
Yeah. So, but I don't remember how we exited there. And the rest of the time, they put me on the loft as a rigger, you know, picked up rigging and spent the rest of the summer doing that.
So what happened after that?
Well, after that, I figured, well, that was my first experience with breaking up. And being on my toes, on my foot, I figured that any jumping that I did would bother me. So I just figured that might as well go and quit. So after the season was over, I didn't try to stay with him. I stayed around Missoula. At the same time, being military, I stayed with reserves. I was working with the 90th Convalescent Center out of Fort Missoula there. So that helped. So like I said, my intentions at the time was to stay and live in Missoula or in Montana. But after that, I stayed pretty close with all the jumpers and all the force personnel. And after that, I was working. Believe it or not, I was way back. They called me the jumping barber because I was with it when I joined the 82nd Airborne in one of the formations. The first sergeant comes up with a little canvas kit rolled up, and we're in formation. He says, "I need a barber. Who knows how to cut hair?" Of course, nobody. They were used to not volunteering for anything. I didn't volunteer, but he looks at me. He says, "You look like a good barber," and he handed me the kit. He said, "You're the company barber." Oh, okay. So first time I unrolled the kit, and the first guy that sat down, I did pretty good. So I said, "Hey, it is not too bad." So I kept it up. So I was a company barber. So when I left the Army, right away I went to a barber school to get the license. I figured no matter where I go, I can always find a job real quick like. So in Montana, I said, "Hey, no problem." They said, "What are you doing here? You're from Texas. There's no job around here." I said, "Well, maybe not for the average, but for me there is." So I took up barbering, so I was working for Mr. Edwards, a barber shop down by the university. And we became quite friends, and I worked there for quite a few years with him. And so I got to know all the foresters and all the jumpers, and so even though I wasn't jumping anymore, still we stayed in touch and visiting and hanging out together and all that. But from there I decided I still want to stay in Montana, so I don't want to come back to Texas. So I moved up to Lincoln, Montana. "What are you going to do there?" "Well, I'm going to open up a barber shop." So all my friends in the barber business, "We heard you're going to Lincoln, open up a barber shop." "Yes, sir." "Oh, you're not going to make it." I said, "Why not?" "Well, there's just not enough people." I I don't agree with you. I said, there's people all over those mountains all over the place. So I said, I'm not worried about it. So the next question they asked me, well, how much are you going to charge? I said, well, how much do we charge here in Missoula? $1.75 a haircut at the time. And I said, well, you can't charge that over there in Lincoln, in a little place like that. I said, do you think that you're working for a fair wage for $1.75? He said, yeah, that's fair. I said, well, then I want fairness. I mean, that's what I'm going to charge over there. So I made more money over there in Lincoln than I ever did in any other place that I worked as a barber. Because the people were wonderful. They accepted me. They were looking forward to coming either at the end of the day or the weekend was it. They would come in and I mean, give me the work, you know. And let's say it was $7, $8, whatever it was for the service, everything they were getting. Give me the works. And when they paid me, they would give me a $15 or $20 bill and say, keep the change. I said, oh man, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
So there, all my friends in Missoula, anytime they were going to Great Falls, they would stop there. Did you ever hear of Jack Nash?
I've heard of him, yeah. Can't place it.
Great guy. He had a family, of course, and every time he went up there just to visit me. Most of them were passing through to Great Falls or something like that. Some even going to Helena and would take the
Fletcher Pass, yeah.
So it was quite interesting. But the main thing was that I had something to do, you know. Right?
Yeah.
That was very, very nice. Yeah.
So when did you leave Montana?
I left Montana in 60, I think it was 64 when I left Montana, because I wanted to stay with the military. I was a sergeant first class with the reserve there in Missoula, and so I said if I go back in, that'd be pretty good income, you know. But the thing was that I had 4 children and a wife, and they looked at that and said, hey, that I've been making pretty good money, you know. So, because at that time they paid for each child, so much per child, and so I would have done pretty good, and they didn't want that. So it says, you can go in and start all over. Nah, I can't do that. But then I had a friend, recruiter in Great Falls. That was the last place I worked at. And he was trying his best to see if he could have me get in, but couldn't do it. And then one day he said, Ben, you know what you could do? He says, get back to San Antonio and go to a recruiter and tell him you want to join the 36th National Guard. I think it was the 36th. Anyway, they had been called for active duty for the Berlin crisis back then, and they were stationed at Fort Hood. He said, go back there and tell them that you want to join the division there. And when they release them from active duty, you just tell them you want to extend active duty. I said, that's a good idea. So I packed my family the same way I did going that way, coming back. And I reported to my family here, and then I said, I'm going to San Antonio and do that. And I was dressed up in appearance and all that, ready for a good presentation. And the recruiter said, oh man, he says, I'd sure like to help you, Sergeant. He said, but if you'd arrived here yesterday, he said, I could have gotten you in just like that. He said, well, we just got back in them days they called it a Twix. We just got a Twix telling us not to recruit anymore for the division because they were being released. So that was the end of that. And so I didn't give up my hopes. I started working at Fort Sam Houston, and I got to know all the military from the general on down, and working at the barber, and I was cutting the general's hair, and he knew that I wanted to get back to active duty, and he says, being anything that I can do for you, you just let me know, and we'll help you. Okay, sir, appreciate it. So one day, finally worked it out. I asked for 82nd Airborne, but the general that knew me says, Ben, I know you're gung-ho, I know you're a paratrooper and all that, he says, but Fort Bragg, it's okay, he says, but it'll be hard for you to make rank, and you need rank for support your family, you know. He said, so I would suggest that you select something more where you can make fast rank. So then I says, well, the Infantry Training Center at Fort Polk, Louisiana. He said, now there you go, that's a good place. Okay, sir, well, I'll take your advice. So we changed